Tesla recently broke ground on their new lithium refinery. Firstly, how important of a facility is that to Tesla? And also, how important is it from a strategic vertical integration point of view? And also, does it just like completely embody everything about what makes Tesla so great? Because they get to a problem or a bottleneck and they just solve it in ways which I just can't imagine other auto OEMs doing.
Yeah, it's really highlights how just, I guess, brave they are by bringing a lot of this stuff in house that typically a automaker would have allowed somebody else to take care of. Because I mean, there anytime you add complexity to your business by doing stuff that you're not, say, super focused on, it adds complexity, right? It makes it so that your staff isn't just focused on building cars. They're focused on building cars and making the software for the self-driving stuff and the operating system in the car. And they're making their own seats, and they're not going to be refining their own lithium, and they're making a humanoid robot, and they're making batteries for homes, and they're making solar panels, right? So anytime you introduce this in a typical environment, it becomes sort of a symptom of jack of all trades, master of none. But what's unique about Tesla is that they're jack of all trades, master of many. And that's sort of rare in how most large corporations behave. Tesla employs well over 100,000 people now. So they're definitely a large corporation, almost $100 billion of revenue per year nowadays. And the fact that they are able to do so many things well that typically would have been handled by a separate company really speaks to the culture that they have and the talent that they have in house. It's just sort of it's fully in line with the DNA of the company, in my opinion, bringing that internally. Now, one thing that might be sort of lost in all of this is that Tesla is getting into the refining game. It seems not because they want to, it's because they have to. They have to get into it to be able to get to their 20 million car goal by 2030. This facility at full ramp should be able to add another million battery equivalent per year capacity for their cars. So, an additional million batteries worth of lithium. And this is going to be lithium hydroxide, not lithium carbonate, which is the less pure version. What they talked about was current lithium processing for lithium hydroxide starts with lithium hydroxide, then most of it gets turned to lithium carbonate, and then the lithium carbonate gets switched over to lithium hydroxide for the more pure versions of lithium. And Tesla's like, we're just going to go with lithium hydroxide to start so we can remove two steps, and we're just going to do it ourselves, which is going to allow them to lower costs by basically simplifying the process, by introducing their own processes and what Tesla does really well, which is automation and introducing new ways of building things. And then they're also going to remove the markup that a third party would have on their product that then Tesla would have to pass on to the customer as well. And in addition to that, I'm guessing this is going to help benefit them as well from a tax credit perspective with the IRA, because then you'll be able to introduce more processes that are local to the United States that will be beneficial into the future as the US gets stricter and stricter around giving credits to companies that bring the next generation supply chain to the States. It's just fully aligned with how they behave. It's fully aligned with their culture. And it's only for a million cars. And so out of 20 million goal of by 2030, this is about 5% capacity, additional capacity for the long-term goal. So they're going to have to build more of those, and other people are going to have to build more of those. But this might be the start of, Tesla saying, "Hey, if y'all don't get into it, we're going to get into it, and we're going to do it better than you can. And if you can't get into it, that's opportunity lost for you." So, you know, so we'll see where it goes.
And although, from a first principles point of view, raw materials shouldn't be a problem long term because there's enough materials on this planet. We all know that for electric vehicles. But is this move kind of an admission of this is one of our biggest risks moving forward? And this is what we do need to be focused on so we can get to that 20 million cars in 2030, or at least give it a bloody good step.
Sure. Yeah, that's 100% it. The a risk for Tesla's long-term growth ambitions, not so much for the company's survival, but its ability to really grow and hit its target, is that lithium refining capability. And they've highlighted this many times on their calls and all the guidance that they've been giving. You said it yourself. It's not the raw materials that are in short supply, it's the refining capability. And this is guidance from Tesla themselves. And they're putting their money where their mouth is, right? They're literally saying we're going to invest into creating this capability because there's not enough out there in the world. So the question becomes, will there be additional facilities necessary by the end of 2030 that's going to allow them to get to 2030? And it seems like that's going to need to be the case. So we need to see other players coming to the fray that are creating that capacity, or Tesla will have to do it on their own. If there is a risk factor to that 20 million target for 2030, this is probably the biggest bottleneck. And people like the limiting factor, Jordan Gisicki, have been talking about this a lot on their channel. If you don't watch him, make sure you go check it out. The limiting factor, Jordan Gisicki, friggin' amazing. And that Tesla themselves have been harping on this 24/7. So it's a great point you bring up. But it's a the growth trajectory is in jeopardy, not so much the survival of the company. It's just you just need to build capacity to get to 20 million. And if you don't get to 20 million, then that might impact your valuation on the stock market, but you're still going to be selling as many cars as humanly possible. Because that's how much capacity there is in the world. And it's funny, I say as humanly possible, it's come to my attention that I say as humanly possible a lot. And now I'm self-conscious about saying as humanly possible. But I've said it like 4 times in the last 10 seconds. So, oh well.
That's why we need the bots. So things that aren't humanly possible can still happen.
That's right. That's right.
So
As
if
much as robotically possible, I should start saying that.
so if Tesla can manage this problem, which could be not an existential problem but a limiting factor on their growth, what is the next, in your opinion, the next biggest bottleneck to Tesla hitting mass scale?
Factory capacity, if the biggest bottleneck from a materials perspective is lithium refinery, and that gets alleviated, there might be a secondary or tertiary refining or raw material bottleneck that will surface after they remove that bottleneck. And perhaps this is not the best question for me to answer. Maybe somebody like a Jordan could answer that question better. But for me, it's factory capacity, building enough factories to be able to manufacture 20 million cars per year. My back of the napkin math says that between all the facilities they have now and all the land they've secured and all the extensions they're building, they probably have somewhere between 8 to 10 million capacity right now. Once the factories are fully built out on the things that they've announced, including Giga Mexico, somewhere between 8 to 10 million once the factories are there and fully ramped. So they need to double that. And if the average new factory is going to be able to produce, say, around 2 million cars per year, given that a lot of these are going to be sort of centered around this compact car, this cheaper car in the next year or two, then that's 5 more factories to get to 20 million. So that appears to be the next one. But as long as they announce the factory once a year that can do 20 million cars per year, 2 million cars each, then that gets resolved. But until the lithium refining one gets fully resolved and we understand where we're at from a global capacity perspective, then the rest of it's kind of like, okay, well, we'll just have to wait and see what happens. So um, perhaps it's one of those like wait and see approaches and see what else is the bottleneck by then. But Tesla's good at solving problems, man. They know how to figure it out. Back in 2014, people were like, "There's not enough batteries for 500,000 cars per year. You're absolutely nuts." They're like, "Okay, we'll build a factory for it." And then Giga Nevada appeared, and then they hit it, and now they're on pace to do 1.8 million this year. Almost 4x what they did in 2020. Let that sink in.